Good afternoon, everyone. It's M.S.G, and today I'm going to be ranking my personal 7 winners and 7 losers of the new Chaos Space Marines points update. The balanced data slate came out within the last 24 hours, and a lot of people have been discussing it. A lot of people have been positive and negative about it, but here I am today to give you my opinions. So just a little update. This video was originally supposed to be a first impressions video. However, there are things that were taking my time yesterday, so I wasn't able to finish the slideshow and comment on what I essentially thought. In addition, Auspex Tactics has also released a losers and winners format video on his channel. As a lot of you are already aware, Auspex Tactics is the premier for 40k content for Warhammer, so I strongly advise that you do go and subscribe to him. He's a really interesting character to watch in terms of his slideshows, in terms of the information he provides. He gives it concisely in an easy to digest format, so the guy is an absolute monster, and he also pretty much brings out a new video every day, so the guy's a machine when it comes to his work ethic. With that said, though, we will proceed. So, just for those who are interested, there has been an announcement for a new Horus Heresy book, which is the Exemplary Battles from the Age of Darkness. Obviously, this includes Fulgrim, the new Demon Prince model, the Ascended one at least, was released a few days ago prior to this video, and he looks phenomenal. So, as an Empress Children character, Fulgrim is probably the guy who you want to be listening to, him and maybe Lucius, but Lucius is just, a lot of people don't like him, but I love him. But either way, for anyone interested in Horus Heresy and Empress Children, I'd definitely recommend that you give this a look when it does get released. I'm very excited for it. I'm hoping that we do get some updates on the 40k side of things. However, it's nice to see the Empress Children getting a bit of love on the Horus Heresy front. So, how has the balanced data slate and points update changed Chaos Space Marines? A lot of our units have had the points reduced overall, which is fantastic to me, and it balances a few of the units out. So I'll explain this later on in the video when we do come to the specific units that it does balance out, but a lot of you are probably familiar with them already because they are quite popular in competitive and tournament lists. There have been a few reworks to the game in general. So, for example, the main two that I have noted on here, which are the most significant, are the Devastating Wounds. So now Devastating Wounds does not deal mortal wounds anymore. It's flat damage, which ignores invulnerable saves and armor saves. So you don't get any damage spillover like before. So it's just 3 mortal wounds, which kills. It's 3 mortal wounds, which is now 3 regular wounds. So it's fantastic at killing a single model which has 3 wounds or less. So you don't get damage spillover where you could shoot, for example, a Forge Fiend, get 2 devastating wounds, which is 6 mortal wounds, and kill 6 guardsmen or whatever like that. Any 1 wound model, it just kills 2 now. So, in my opinion, this is a great thing. A lot of the overpowered units, in my opinion, so like your Eldari, like mortal wound shenanigans with devastating wounds on fate dice, that kind of thing, no longer a problem. It's essentially no more damage spillover, which is what it needed. And ironically, it also serves us better into Custodies because, as I'm going to mention later, a lot of the units that Custodians have a 4-up invul against, a 4-up feel no pain against mortal wounds. So, you know, it essentially just counters that completely, which is, in my opinion, great because I hate playing against Custodies. It's not very fun. The second thing that as the balanced data slate has changed is the free stratagem abilities. So obviously the main offenders for this in our codex would be the Chaos Terminator Lord and the Chaos Regulator Lord, so the guy with the Thunderhammer. They only work with battle tactics stratagems now, so you do not get access to the free stratagem on the Nurgle strat anymore. Any of the Mark ones you don't get. Insane Bravery, Heroic Intervention, Rapid Ingress, and Overwatch are now free. No longer free. You will have to pay the corresponding command point cost for that. You don't get it for free anymore. However, we still do get Infernal Rites, which is the Armor of Contempt, for free, which is great because that costs 2 CP. Profane Zeal, which is the undivided full hits and rerolls to wound. Full hit rerolls and full wound rerolls on a unit. And we also get Go to Ground and Command rerolls for free, which is great. It's it takes the edge off. It's still nasty not having the free Nurgle stratagem, but again, there are ways for us to get CP back, which I'll explain later. So, credit to the subreddit on r/chaos40k and specifically a credit to username Cypher10110. He is the guy who graciously created the slate that we see here. These are the changes that have been listed in a mathematical sort. So you can see there's a lot of green, which is fantastic. There's only Forge Fiends, Obliterators, the Master of Possessions, and Abaddon the Despoiler that have had points increases, whereas everywhere else has had a points decrease, which is fantastic. That's roughly about, I can't really do maths at the top of my head, unfortunately, but that's a lot of positive. So, green's always good. You can see, though, briefly, I will stay on this for anyone who's interested in screenshotting it. I will run through them all. So Abaddon has gone from 280 points to 310. This was expected. He is a linchpin in a lot of Chaos units list. He is fantastic. Fabius Bile has gone down to 85. Initially, it was 100. So he's nearly had a 20% decrease, which is great. Fabius is always an interesting unit, especially when I was reading his data sheet. He offers a different playstyle to a lot of the regular Chaos stuff we have now. Vashtor has had a 18.4% decrease in his points. He's gone from 225 to 190, which it's all right. Vashtor's still really bad, though, unfortunately. The Chaos Terminator Lord has had a points decrease, only up to 5 points, so he's gone from 100 to 95. Dark Apostle's gone down from 85 to 75, which is great. Lord Discordant has gone down from 220 to 190, which is still not enough in my opinion, which we'll get onto later. Legionaries have had a points cut as well, so they've gone from 100 to 90. Chosen have gone down from 115 to 110, which is baffling to me. The Hellbrute as well has gone down from 155 to 140. Possessed have gone down from 145 to 140. Bikers have gone down from 95 to 85. Chaos Spawn have gone down from 80 to 70. Raptors have gone down from 95 to 90, which is nice. A little bit of points cut on a very, very good unit anyway is always strong. Now, my personal pointer out, which I'm going to mention here, and you will see it later in the video. I'm not going to get into it deeply, but Warp Talons have gone from 130 for 5 to 100 for 5, which is fantastic. That is insanely good. That's a 30% deduction in points overall. So these guys are fantastic. Venom Crawler, which was already really strong, has gone down from 140 to 120, which is great. I always love Venom Crawlers. 140 on the Chaos Predator Annihilator has gone down to 130, which is good. Vindicator's gone down from the ludicrously expensive 210 to 190, and the Defiler follows the same suit, which is 210 to 190. Forge Fiend has gone up, which is expected given the proclivity and the abundance of them in competitive list. It's gone from 165 to 180, which is an 8.3% increase in points. Obliterators have gone up, again, the same reason. They're just way too good at the minute. 160 points to 170, so they are now a 340 for 4 of them, which is pretty expensive, but again, they're in a lot of lists. The Land Raiders got a points decrease, which is 255 to a 240. And finally, the Chaos Rhino has had a points decrease from 80 to 75, which is great because rhinos are our bread and butter transport. It's always nice to get them in a good spot where they're not too pricey and frees up some more points. So, like I said, if you want to screenshot this or visit the subreddit or go onto Cypher's profile to hopefully see the post if he hasn't deleted it, you are more than welcome to. But with that said, let's proceed. So I do need to mention this before we do go forward, which I forgot to initially mention. If it's on the losers list, it does not mean they are a bad unit. It means they have been shafted or have been nerfed in some way through the data slate changes. It doesn't necessarily mean if this is number 1, it's really bad, don't touch it. It means this is, in my opinion, the one that has been hurt the most by this balanced data slate change. It does not mean that unit is bad, and anything on the winners list does not automatically mean it's an auto include. This is just a really good indicator of who's benefited most from it, which we might see more in future, and which we won't possibly see more in future due to the changes that have been mentioned. So we'll proceed. So dishonorable mention, Legionaries. These guys are still in an awkward spot because they're 100 points for 5 is too expensive. 90 points for 180 points for a 10-man squad is just just not good enough. It's really not good enough. They just don't do anything really well. Like, yeah, they're nasty in melee if you get them on an objective. I've personally had that experience against Blood Angels where I've run in with a melee 10-man with a Chaos Lord, Mark of Slanesh, and just melted an entire squad of Deathwing. Not Deathwing, sorry. Death Company, the guys with the Thunder Hammers. I absolutely eviscerated them. They couldn't get anywhere near me. And it pretty much won the mid game because of these. And they get reroll wound rolls, which is fantastic as well. Again, though, they are just outclassed by Chosen, and we'll get onto that later. However, you are going to have to look at this from a mathematical perspective. So for all those who are newer to the game and are trying to get better at it, which is fair, I'm going to throw this one out there. You need to, at the heart of the decisions you make when you are forming a list, is if you're going for 100% competitive, if you're doing casual and you want to get a bit of flavour, that's perfectly fine. However, for competitive, you've got to indicate what can I get from this unit for the least amount of points. Now, Games Workshop have announced that they aren't changing the squad sizes and the points anymore, so your optimal loadout will be to bring whatever the best guns are, whatever the best melee things are. So, for example, Legionaries can bring a las cannon, 1 for every 5. So that's one las cannon shot, which is a meta weapon at the minute. Las cannons are really good, especially given the prevalence of, high toughness tanks and high toughness models in the meta at the minute. You are paying 90 points for 1, whereas with Havocs you get 135 points for 4, and you're hitting on 3s always, even if you move with Havocs. They also have an extra point of toughness, and they've also got Mark and Nurgle, because they're a dedicated shooting unit. You don't really want to run a 5-man squad of Legionaries with the Mark and Nurgle, because you just get one shot, and it's hitting on a fort unless you stand still. It's just, it doesn't make much sense to me, because if you have that one shot and you miss, it's kind of gimped. That's the issue with it. However, if you're running Legionaries with Mark and Nurgle, you shouldn't be. You should always run them with either Mark of Slanesh, maybe Undivided, or Khorne. I don't think they're good for shooting. So they're just awkward. They're an awkward unit. I do think they need further points cuts. However, in the meantime, the meta choices are going to be cultists are going to be your chaff, your action monkeys, your sticky objective holders, and your chosen are just going to be objectively flat out better than legionaries. And I will explain that later. So number 7 is the Defiler. So this guy it's a shame because I absolutely adore the Defilers. He has had a points cut. Like I mentioned earlier, he's gone from 210 points to 190. He needed more, in my opinion. He's only toughness 10, and he does have 14 wounds. He does have a 5-up invul, which is great, especially against high AP. It's always nice to have an invul than not have it. But the 3-up save is a bit, he should be a 2-up in my opinion. I don't think he should be a 3-up. It's a bit weird that he is. However, he's a good unit. He's okay. He's just awkward. So he's not as good as shooting as the Forge Fiend or the Obliterators are, or the Mauler Fiend. In melee, he's better than. He's just a good melee threat that's in a vehicle form. He can punch up because his claws are really good. 5 attacks at strength 16 -3 d6 +1 damage is always great. His ability is good, but it should be base kit. I don't understand why it's not a base kit ability, because no other model is kind of like the Defiler. The Defiler's a very unique model in the aspect of you can move him like in very peculiar spots. It's awkward. But again, the guy has got some okay shooting. It's not too bad. However, I do think he's mainly a melee threat. The battle cannon's not too bad on him, which is the Defiler cannon, which is the super overpowered auto cannon, essentially, or an auto cannon with +1 strength. So it's not too bad. Other than that, I think he needs a further points cut, because him and the Vindicator, he's got more range than the Vindicator in terms of shooting. However, you're not bringing the Defiler for your shooting. Your Defiler's going to soften a few targets up with the gun, but then his main damage comes from melee. So this guy needs another points cut. Maybe bring him to about, I'd say 160, 170, maybe 165, maybe a bit lower, because he's just, you want him in that nice spot where no one's just going to be like, okay, we're just going to spam 3, but you also don't want him to be completely useless. He needs a bit of a tweak but I do think he loses out, especially the least amount out of the losers, because he looks more viable, but there are better options available, which is a shame because, like I said, the guy is a cool model. Next up is the Forge Fiend. I am going to get a lot of stick for this. A lot of people are going to be like, oh, how come he's on the losers list? I'll explain. So, originally, Devastating Wounds has pretty much made this guy the best shooting, if not the best unit in our codex. And the reason as to why that is because if you get really high amounts of shots, Devastating Wound Mortals, you are pretty much anti everything. You can just shoot anything and it's going to hurt it. However, they have gone up in the points cost as well. So they've gone from 165 to 180. It's still really strong. Don't discount it based on the fact that because it's 180 points, it's going to be useless. You are probably still going to see a few of these guys. I just don't think you're going to see the 3 auto include in every list, just shooting the absolute shit out of everything. Because, yeah, the dev wounds rework is necessary in my opinion. I don't think it should have been. Well, I think it should have been implemented in a lot earlier because mortal wounds are always going to be a bit of a contentious topic and very difficult to balance because you don't want them to be so scarce as to where they're useless. However, you don't want them to be so abundant as to where every character and every unit has got them and is just deleting them because invulnerable saves and armor saves are completely fucking useless against them. But I digress. So ultimately, the Forge Fiend is still going to benefit because it's going to be streamlined into a more heavy infantry dealing with unit. So, for example, your Custodes are toughness 6 on average, roughly. Your your ectoplasma cannons are going to absolutely shred them. Wounded on 3s, -3, brings them up to a 4-up invul. To fail the invul, they're just dead. No 4-up, feel no pain against mortals anymore. It ignores the invul if they're on a 6, so any 6s that you get that would have been devastating wounds, they just die flat out, which is great. However, the points decrease is massive because if you bring in the 3 of them, which is what a lot of people used to do, your list goes up by 45 points, which is a shame. So that might not seem like much. Like, oh, it's only 45 points. Trust me, it is. Anything that's in, I think, plus 30 maybe is considered to be a bit, what are you getting rid of to compensate for this? I do think you will still see Forge Fiends, though. They are really, really good. And in certain lists, you can afford to kind of bring 3 still if you can like mix and match. But a majority of the time, the points costs are not really that bad. But I do think for the Forge Fiend, it is pretty noticeable. You will not see as many. But either way, Helldrake, no points changes. It's still 210 points. Why is this thing 210 points still? It's awful. It's really, really, really good against fly units. It's fantastic against fly units. However, it's a very niche counter pick. So in 7th edition, I remember being informed by a few of my friends that played against Chaos that Helldrakes were a nightmare. And ever since 8th edition, they've just been kind of shit or just meh, to be honest with you. But again, these guys are really good on paper. They just need a bit more of a generalist profile and then a massive points cut. They do not need to be, nothing like this big needs to be 210 points. You are sniffing glue, Games Workshop. Again, it's just too niche. It's too niche. It's a fantastic model. I absolutely adore the Helldrake, but they're a difficult unit to balance because you've got a unit that's potentially moving 20 inches and can get into your opponent's deployment turn 1 and cause a lot of problems. And they're still too expensive to be a distraction card effects because of 210 points. 4th is a Chaos Spawn. I'm just going to be 100% real with people. These guys are absolutely atrocious. They're awful. And the reason for that is the unit size. So they basically just got absolutely ruined by Games Workshop because of the unit size changes. They have mentioned, obviously, like I mentioned previously, they're not going to be changing the squad size for points thing. It's going to be, this is how many you're bringing in a unit, and this is how much it's going to cost you, and this is the maximum amount that you can bring in, this is how much this is going to cost you. Stupid way to put it. It's simplified, but not simple. In my opinion, it just ruins it. Because unless these guys, you can run them, unless you can run these guys as solo spawn, there's no point. Absolutely no point. They're not going to be good. Solo Spawn in 9th edition was really good. The deep strike screening, capturing objectives that you didn't need. You didn't have to grab cultists for them. You could just put a 21-point chaos spawn on an objective. Thumbs up. However, the problem then lies in the fact that the chaos spawn now are 70 points for 2, which is 35 points for a model that is objectively worse than its previous iteration in 9th edition. I understand that a lot of units have been nerfed across the board, given the proclivities of the AP, damage being too high, just a lot of killy stuff in 9th edition. However, Chaos Spawn, again, they might have had a points cut, but until Games Workshop revokes the limited squad size for X amount of points, they're just going to be really bad. Don't bother bringing them. Third is the Lord Discordant. Again, the points cost just wasn't enough. And in my opinion, this guy, in terms of reworks, like if we were to sit down and say, right, out of every single unit in the entire index, which would you want to rework? This guy would be probably the top of the list because he's useless. He doesn't do anything. He does one thing, very mediocre, and he used to be a blender in 9th edition. As a lot of people are already aware that are playing Chaos Space Marines, this guy used to be an absolute shredder. He would fuck anything up in melee pretty convincingly. And he had the character protection. Now he doesn't get the character protection because he's 10 wounds. He's only toughness 9, which is okay into certain matchups, but against others it's a bit and his melee is just really bad in comparison. I don't think it's any good anymore. Yeah, he gets +1 to wound on a charge, and he gets all the strength 6 attacks, but again, it's not going to be like he was in 9th edition. He's just going to be really bad. He's not good enough to be melee in vehicles due to the toughness rework since 10th edition, and his abilities are pretty mess still. He just needs a rework. The points cost change doesn't benefit him. This guy is literally never going to be seen. Maybe in casual list because a lot of people do like the model, which is fair because he is a great model. But again, he's just not good enough to be dealing with. He's too good to be dealing with Met infantry, but he's too weak to be dealing with like your big tanks, your heavy hitters, which is what he's supposedly the problem of in the lore. He's meant to be this guy who fucks up the machine spirits of everything, and his abilities reflect that, but his stat line doesn't. For some reason, it's not working. There we go. Right. So, Chaos Lord. This guy, it's a shame because this guy was one of my favourite units in 8th edition and in 9th edition. I just think he looks cool, but he's had no points cost change. He's still 75 points. However, the problem lies in the fact that the stratagem rework, as mentioned earlier, he's been severely limited in terms of his scope as to what he can do. The free Nurgle stratagem on a blob of Chosen that were Nurgle, or the free Armor of Contempt, which you can still get, which is still really good, it's just not going to be the same. He's been nerfed by proxy, which in my opinion, the free stratagem nerfs, yeah, it's nice to have them because it does benefit us more than it hinders us in a certain aspect. However, I do think that the free AP is really good. Undivided rerolls is still really good. However, that and the Dev Wounds rework as well, given he has devastating wounds on the Thunder Hammer, the Demon Hammer, which is what you were bringing him for originally, it will weaken his output a drastic amount. The guy is still going to be, he's still a cheap unit, and you can still bring him on a unit of Chosen. He's still going to be really good, but I just think that he loses a lot with the new balanced data slate changes. And I think you might be seeing the Terminator Sorcerer models more than this guy. So, number 1, Possessed. A lot of people are going to be thinking, Matt, you're on crack, and I probably am because I do play Empress Children. However, they did get a points cut. It's a 5-point cut, so you get 280 points for 10 and 140 points for 5. A lot of people are going to be thinking that I am objectively wrong with this, but this is my video and I'm just going to put my opinion forward, and you feel free to disagree if you want. The devastating wounds rework has absolutely mullered these guys. They're just awkward. -1 AP is not good in melee. It should be at least -2. I've said it before. I think they should return to 9th edition in melee, but at shooting, keep it unless it's like a shooting faction, in which case maybe. But for other stuff, shooting should not be the go-to. I think shooting's boring. Melee is a lot more skill-based and a lot more position-based on average. But again, they're still going to be usable with the Profane Zeal stratagem, like I mentioned, because it is a battle tactic one. And they are pretty tough, decently tough at least. I mean, they are toughness 6, 3 up armor, 5 up invul. Pretty good. I just think you're not gonna be really seeing them. There are far better units you can bring now for the stuff you would normally get for possessed. So I'm just going to spoil it a bit. Warp Talons, I think, are better than these guys. I think Warp Talons are a lot faster. They may be not as tough, and they might not have 3 wounds, which is great, but they have fly, so they can just fly across terrain and get to a unit faster if you deep strike them. They have the Battle Shock ability, which is going to be massive. But again, I'll talk about that later. I'm not going to spoil it, but Possessed, in my opinion, lost the most out of the recent balance change, which sucks because Possessed are great. They're a good alternative. You might still see them. I think a lot of people are still going to consider bringing maybe a squad of 5, maybe a squad of 10, or 2 squads of 5. But as far as it goes, I just don't think they're very good in comparison to the Dev Wounds rework. I think they've got massively gimped by it. But like I said, you're probably still going to see them. And the minus 5 points to the it's not going to help them. It's just not. So for a more positive note, though, we are going to be getting on to the winners. The honourable mention is the Dark Apostle. He did get a points cut. He is now 75 points. And a thing I didn't mention earlier, which has just occurred to me, given I've essentially just reminded myself on the video, you cannot use Insane Bravery more than once per battle, which is fantastic, in my opinion. It makes Battle Shock a lot more lethal and forces you to play smart where you can't just go, yeah, 1 CP, gone. It's really good. So, for example, if you bring in Cypher, you can hit him with the command point reroll stratagem, Vex, more often than you can with the Insane Bravery one, which is the one that I used to use Cypher for because of the abundance of it. Now, that's great for me, but for other people, a lot of people are going to be like, oh, that's kind of bad. Here's where this guy, I think, may be brought. I'm going to consider bringing him in a few of my lists. And the reason why is because you can attach him to Chosen. If they get battle shocked, any Heretic Astartes unit within 9 inches, so it doesn't have to be the guy who is, hit with the battle shock that you're attached to. You can do it to another unit that's within 9 inches. You can target him or that unit, and they're no longer battle shocked for free, which is great. That is once per battle. However, I think it's going to be a good counterplay to a lot of battle shock heavy stuff. So you're going to be saving, instead of using it on a unit you might not want to get rid of, but it's too expensive to use it on, just use this. And it's way better. You are paying 75 points, though. The guy is decently tanky as well. He's got a 4-up invul. His bodyguards also do get that 4-up invul, which is great because they don't have a really good save. It's like a 6-up save. And he's okay in melee. He can throw a few mortal wounds out with Malign Sacrifice, which is kind of, I'll be honest, it's shit. I think it's a really bad ability. Because you're essentially giving up your durability for 1 mortal wound, which is not worth it under any circumstances. Sorry, not under any. Under majority of circumstances, you're going to want to have that extra defense for your characters for assassinate or anything like that. It's nice to just have them. With that said, though, his main thing is that he gets +1 to wound if he's attached to a model. A unit. So I've chosen with +1 to wound in melee, and chosen a cheaper now. So it writes itself. It's really good. I think he's going to be really good in melee. If you play him a lot more defensively, and you get your Marcus Slanesh where you can advance and charge him, you can with them anyway because they get it as their ability. You do get +1 to wound in melee, so you get exploding 5s in melee, +1 to wound. You're probably going to be wounding most things on either 4s or 5s, so it brings it down to a 4 or a 3, which is great. Gives it that extra damage buff. I think they're just going to be really good. I think you might see them. There might be a sleeper pick. I might be completely wrong, but either way. 7th is the Obliterators. Again, these guys have just been bumped up, in my opinion, to the top shooting unit in the entire index. They have been increased in their points cost, so you're paying 170 points for 2. But like I said, I do think the Forge Fiend has now been made redundant. Not redundant, but I think these guys are a lot more the premier go-to unit for anti-shooting stuff. These guys hit really hard, strength 12 minus 3, 4 damage. If you're within half of the weapon's max range, which is 24 inches, if you're within 12 inches, it's a flat 6 damage a shot. If you've played with them, you know how hard they hit. If you played against them, you know how hard they hit. They're just phenomenally good. Yeah, they're slow, and they do require a lot of technical skill and a lot of tactics to play well with, because they're only 4-inch move. Yeah, 24 inch isn't too bad, but it's not the best. Like, it's middling. It's like on the lower end of good. Oh, sorry, lower end of average. 24 inches is it's okay. But you, with the smart ability use of the indirect fire, which you can use, and you can use the just good terrain, rapid ingress, smartly playing against your opponent. These are a good keep away stick, because your opponent is not going to want to stand these guys next to anything unless anything that gets next to it is going to die, because it's got a good anti-everything profile. If you're dealing with a lot of chaff, you just pop the warp hail, which is the chaff killing one, which is d6 plus 3, strength 5 minus 1 1. Any elite infantry, like your chosen that you're up against them, you can, any 2-wound infantry gets shredded by the ruinous salvo one, which also gets blast, which is good. And if you shooting into tanks, it's obviously the top one, which is D3, strength 12, minus 3, 4 damage. These guys are really good. You will see them a lot more. Yeah, they are expensive. However, I do think they're worth every point bringing them. So 6, controversial one. The Land Raider. I read on Reddit that there was a guy who brought a list of Land Raiders and absolutely destroyed everybody, which is phenomenal, because the Land Raider is the absolute peak of Chad gamer play. They're fucking great. I absolutely love Land Raiders. I think they're phenomenally fun. They're a fun unit. They did get a points cut. They are 240 points. That's still pretty expensive. However, they have the capacity to transport, I think it's 16 things, unless it's like a Terminator, which counts as 2, I think. So you can transport like a blob of Chosen in them and another squad of Chosen, like 5-man, and just jump in and then just jump out and shoot everything. They do have assault ramp, which is great, which means that they don't get the firing deck rule, which is unfortunate, but it's nice to have that ability to essentially jump out of move the Land Raider, disembark the units in it. They then get to charge, which is phenomenal. It's fantastic. So I do think you might see 1 or 2 of these. I'll be honest. I'd be very happy to see them, because Land Raiders are great. A lot of people say they're just more expensive than rhinos. They're just transport. They're a glorified transport, basically, which is, I'm not going to lie, it is true. Like, if you are going to want to pick rhinos, because the rhinos have also got a points decrease. Rhinos are now 75 points, so you will see rhinos a lot more than you already are doing. But I don't know, I just think I've got that urge for Land Raiders. Toughness 12, they've got really good anti-tank with the Soul Shatter las cannons. The ability for the assault ramp is really good, especially on our army. 16 wounds is not easy to chew through. I'll be honest, I think you'll see them a lot more. If you're playing against Tau Guard or Votan, then yeah, you're probably going to want to put them in reserves, and you're not going to want to be an idiot. Just play careless. Don't be careless with them. Play them smart. That's all I'm going to say on that matter. But again, I still think the Land Raider benefits a lot, and you might see them. Number 5, Venom Crawler. So this thing is an absolute monster, and it's even more of a monster now because they've reduced it by 20 points, which is good. So instead of paying the original, I think it was 420. No, my math is terrible. No, I'm right, actually. Yeah, 420 points. For 3, they are now 360. So you are saving 60 points on 3, which is half of the cost of the new ones, which is great. So you get 60 points elsewhere for those who are running 3 Venom Crawlers. Yeah, I know the Venom Crawlers are strength 6 minus 1 2 damage, which is not, it's not the worst shooting profile, but it's not the best either. I just think they're great. Every single time I bring at least 1 or 2 of these guys in a game, and they always make the points back, because they're basically just the equivalent of, they have that many shots. Who cares? You've got 12 shots per guy. Mark and Urgle exploding 5s, hitting on 3s. You're more than likely going to hit all those shots and get a few extra. And if you kill anything, you can just get an extra 2 shots out of it because it's 1 per gun. So you get an extra 2 shots flat and extra melee attacks. You probably want to keep these guys back. They are really good now as a distraction kind of effect. So 120 points for a 12-inch move, toughness 9, 9 wounds model, which is fantastic in my opinion. And it's got a 5-up invul as well because it's technically a demon engine. But again, fantastic unit. They are awkward to play a bit because they are quite big and they will get shot if your opponent knows what they're capable of. But if you bring 3 of them for 360 points, it's not really that much of a problem now. I do think these guys are benefiting a lot from this bit, the new changes though. Number 4 is the Hellbrute. This guy got a nerf, which was surprising to me. A lot of players in the Reddit were suggesting that the Hellbrute didn't need the points cut, which, in my opinion, I'm kind of agreeing with. However, a lot of people were saying in response that the Hellbrute is difficult to maneuver, is very not as durable as people think. He doesn't have an invul. He's only got a 2-up armor, no invul, and he will get chewed through if someone focuses him. However, again, it's the skill of the player and the terrain that you need to take into account. It does have a 6-inch aura, which is the main thing you're bringing it for. You're not bringing it for the shooting because it doesn't have any, or it does, but it's like, The melee is pretty good. He's decently tough against most stuff, but he's anything that's above strength 10 is just going to shred him. But do I think you will see him a lot more? Yes, I do. I think he is the premier, like I said in the slideshow here, premier force multiplier unit in the index. You want to get sustained hits and lethal hits on the same thing? Yeah, you're fine. Yeah, he's really good. So for those who are newer and don't understand or don't have a grasp on the ruling for that, so let me explain. So for example, let's say I get a unit of 10 chosen and they are Mark of Khorne, which means that I dart pack them and now they are auto wounding on hits of 5 up. So let's say I get 3 6s and 4 5s. The 4 5s will automatically wound the target, but they won't generate an extra hit. So the sustained hit only happens if it's on a 6 for Khorne. So if I get those 3 6s that I got earlier, they will auto wound. In addition, they will also generate an extra attack, which I will need to roll to wound for. So it basically just gives you flat up extra attacks and auto wounds for 140 points within a 6-inch bubble, which is fucking great. If you can fan these guys out well enough and keep him next to them, you're just going to hit way harder than you think. Trust me, this guy is phenomenal. Abaddon is the third. The guy got a points increase from 280 to 310, which is 30 points increase, which is noticeable. But again, he's still going to be a linchpin in most CSM lists. He's an absolute beast. He's fantastic. If you've played Abaddon, you know what I'm talking about. The guy is an absolute monster. He's just so good at just keeping your units alive. He can do the leadership test and get you some CP back, which is going to be massively important now, given the free stratagems have been changed. The 4-up invul's always, in my opinion, the 4-up invul's his best ability because it's just really good. Chosen on a 4-up invul. Your Hellbrute on a 4-up invul, so you can keep him next to your Hellbrute and keep him alive. Does he have the Heretic Astartes keywords? Let me just check. I don't think he does. Oh, no, he does, yeah. So the Hellbrute gets a 4-up invul. The unit is attached to get all the marks. He gets CP back on a 2-up if he passes a leadership test. He's so good. Yeah, he's 310 points, but a majority of the lists that people have been bringing, those little tiny incremental points decreases. So, for example, Chosen, if you bring in 3 squads of Chosen, you get 15 points added to your list now for free because they just took 5 points off them for some strange reason. And other things that you bring in, for example, that's an extra obliterator. You can bring an extra squad of obliterators. You can bring. It balances it out. So the majority of the lists that you do see, Abaddon is already going to be still being put in them because the 30 points that have been added to him are going to be compensated elsewhere by the points cuts. So you've chosen maybe legionaries, maybe your other units that have had the points cuts, like rhinos. It's just it adds up. But again, Abaddon is phenomenal. You will see him again in a lot of lists, but he is very pricey. He's 310 points. But, you know, it is what it is. So, second is Chosen. These guys have gone from 115 points to 110. I do not understand why they have had a points cut because they were already really good. I were expecting him to get nerfed. I'll be honest, I thought these guys were way too good. I think Games Workshop were just going to increase the points cost of these guys and decrease the points cost of Legionaries to a point where neither of them are in a good spot. But Games Workshop nerfed them. No, they didn't nerf them, they buffed them technically. They reduced the points cost by 5, which is they're just a better Legionary. You don't ever need to bring Legionaries when these guys are around at this points cost. You're paying an extra 20 points for extra wound, 5 extra wounds. So a squad of 5 Legionaries is 2 wounds. A squad of 5 Chosen is 3 wounds. You're paying an extra 20 points for 5 wounds. Better shooting, in my opinion. Marginally, Legionaries have got better shooting, technically, but you're playing for a far better melee threat as well, because the accursed weapons and power fists are just really, really strong. And their unit ability, the Chosen Marauders, advance and shoot and advance and charge, or fall back and shoot and fall back and charge on a Dark Pact. Oh no, you don't even need to Dark Pact. Wow. Yeah, these guys are phenomenal. I didn't even read that. Wow. Yeah, they have been nerfed to a degree, though. I do think that the stratagem nerf for the free stratagems nerfed them to a bit, but I do think these guys are still going to be, chef's kiss. Like, these are fantastic, fantastic unit. You're gonna see a lot of them. 220 points for a unit of 10 is just really, really good. So, number 1, the Warp Talons. Warp Talons are originally they were way too expensive. So the Raptors were objectively the better choice because Raptors can do actions, they're a lot cheaper, they have a bit of shooting, and they're not as good in melee as a Warp Talon. However, the Warp Talons are now 100 points for 5. So that's 200 points for 10. You can bring these guys, run them in the back line, and possibly cause us so much carnage with just little squads of 5, maybe a squad of 10 to add to that extra punch for 200 points. It's just they're going to be used. I guarantee you will see Warp Talons a lot more. I'm going to be bringing them a lot more because it took me ages to paint the fuckers, and I want to make sure that they're on the tabletop. You can rapid ingress them. A little tactic that I was informed of with their ability is that, obviously, we'll just run through the stats briefly and then I'll explain the ability. So they do have 12-inch move, which is great, like I mentioned earlier. They have the fly keyword, which means that they can just ignore terrain and just jump over stuff and just get straight to it, which is, again, great. So you're not moving around terrain, you're having to move forward. Toughness 4, 2 wounds. It's pretty bad, I'm not going to lie. 3 up save. These guys do get 5 up invul, though, because they're demons. And 1 OC. You don't really care about the OC. So, 4 attacks each. 3s. Strength 5, -2, 1 damage. You can either get Corn on these guys and just auto wound on them, which is great. Or you can get Slanesh, which gives you the advance and charge. So, for example, you get 12-inch move, advance and charge for a CP, which in my opinion is really, really good. It extends that threat range. So these guys, I'll be honest, I was going to put Bikers at number 3, but I think Abaddon was better. These guys are similar to Bikers, but I think the Bikers have got worse melee, and their ability is a lot weirder to play around, whereas with the Warp Talons, rapid ingress them, or if you want to, or just keep them on the board behind terrain, zip up the field, and then just charge into something for 200 points for 10 of them. Really, really good. You can do a little tactic, which I have read, and a lot of people were questioning this, but the guy provided a thing. It was on Reddit somewhere. I can't remember specifically who said it, but you can bubble wrap the vehicle if you charge it, like a knight, for example. If you get into the knight's range and charge it, and every time you fight, each time an enemy unit is within engagement range of this unit and is selected to fall back, if the enemy unit is not battle shocked, your opponent must take a desperate escape test. If it is battle shocked until the end of the phase, each time it takes a desperate escape test for a model in that unit, subtract 1. So on a coin flip, that can one-shot a knight for 200 points. Or for 100 points even. You can just they're forced to take it. So if they fail that desperate escape, the unit dies, because it specifically says somewhere the model dies if it fails a desperate escape. It doesn't say it takes a wound. It just dies. So you can one-shot a knight with these guys. It is broken. I don't think that's how the rule should be. However, rules as written, it's silly. It's really silly, but I think overall these guys are fantastic. I'm going to be bringing some Warp Talons to my next lists and my next games, and I hope my fellow brothers in Chaos, or brothers, sisters, and whatever you identify as, bring them in their lists, and we can all have a shredding good time. With that said, though, thank you for spending your time to watch the video. It's always appreciated. I am going to be trying to make some more videos in this format. I understand a lot of people don't like the aspect ratio, which is unfortunate because, again, I have a life. I'm not going to be spending hours editing videos, unfortunately. I am still trying to look into getting far better editing software because, I'll be honest, I want to improve my quality of my videos. I had a lot of positive feedback from the last one, which was the best units and the worst units, in my opinion, which is great. Thank you for the feedback. Please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed the video or you've learned something from it. I'd appreciate it as well if you left your opinion in the comment section below. It's nice and very thoughtful of you to leave really good, honest feedback, and I really enjoy talking to you guys. It offers a new perspective, whether you're posting lists, whether you disagree with something, whether you agree with it, if it's benefited you. Fantastic. I'm always happy to help you. But with that said, wherever you are, guys, I hope you have a really good day or night. And wherever you are, remember to praise the dark gods. Thank you for watching. You guys take care. Bye-bye.